It's just ridiculous.
So we are going live pretty much now. So welcome everybody. This is Pip and Sam on the Wealth Debate. So good evening. It's Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock here in God's country, 8 o'clock where Sam lives. And so great to have everybody on here. First thing I want to ask you, if you're on here, say hello. Love to see all the energy from the people that are tuning in live. What I'd also like you guys to do, if you're tuning in live, I want you to put some questions. If there's any questions or things that you want to talk about, put those in the chat box as well, because I'd love to hear what you have to say. More importantly, I'd love to know if you're on here. And secondly, if you have any other comments that you want to make, please do so. So let us know if you're out there. Let us know if you have any comments or questions, things you want to talk about. Things you've heard Sam say that you disagree with, because that's a lot of it right there. A lot of the, I mean, I disagree with his thing on his head tonight. Now, we'll have our first discussion and maybe a first opinion. What would you guys call, don't say Sam, what do you call what he has on his head right now? What do you call that? And I don't care. I want everybody to type in what they would call it where they live, because everybody's going to call it something different. So type in, what do you think Sam has on his head right now? And then obviously the Canadians have their own way of talking, but us Americans, we do it right. That's the way I look at it. So Sammy, what are you up to? How are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm wearing this thing that will not be named, right, to protest the cold in Canada. And I wanted to ask, my first question is, if you live in God's country, where do the rest of us live? That's what I want to know. Like, when you say that, do you think, well, poor sucker, in what country, right?
I don't have an answer for that. I guess it's just something I heard years ago, and I stupidly repeat it. Yeah, that's probably what I did.
That happens to the best of us. It does. Welcome everybody here to rant about other things, about money and wealth and politics and people in general. I love people most days. Sometimes, though, people drive me crazy. I find or have found that the internet, as wonderful as it is, the greatest advantage to the internet is all the information that it has that we have access to, and the greatest weakness is all the information that's available to us. And I think that I've noticed that people, I don't know if you know this, but the people, do you remember, most people call them snake oil salesmen, used to be called barbers, and they would go from town to town, and they would actually sell things, and one of those things was, that clear liquid, some might call water, and sold it as a cure-all to all sorts of ailments. And you look back at that and you think, how could people believe that this liquid could cure their back and their foot and their headaches and their stomach aches and their ear aches, and help them see, and bring back youth, all these things, this one particular elixir. And people were like, yeah, give me some of that. And you think, they didn't know any better. That's why they bought it. I mean, we can't put too much pressure on them. And I find that people are more likely to believe in elixirs of such, like the barbers sold centuries ago, town to town, because of all the information that's available. It seems that we're more likely to be susceptible to these cure-all ideas that this particular thing could help them. I read this once at a chiropractor. You ready? So the chiropractor thing, and I'm not saying chiropractoring is not good for you or something you should try. I think there's some definite value in it, but I saw once it said that chiropractoring is, I think that's what they call it, can cure or prevent cancer. And I thought, wow, that's quite the statement. How do you prove that? Somebody goes to the chiropractor once a week and somehow they get sick, and you say, well, you should have went twice a week. I mean, you just didn't go enough. That's why it happened to you. Some of these claims I find are outrageous as being kind. It's disappointing to me to see such claims made with very little substance whatsoever. And I think it has to do with what we want to believe and how hard we want to believe in a shortcut to get where we want to go. So I think it's there's some wisdom in accepting the principles and the laws around us and embracing them and applying them and realistically recognizing that effort, hard work. And when I say hard work, it doesn't mean working 16-hour days. It means, working hard in the time allotted to us, whether that's 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 1 hour a day, or whatever it is that you're focused on that task and you put the effort in and you put the energy in, and you put the even the attitude in it, right? To not feel like you're being taken advantage of or sacrificing something that's not worth what you're putting in. I think there's something to be said about effort, and that effort, the right effort and the right intention to get things done has value, and we don't have to always get a shortcut to where we want to go. Pip's laughing at me. I don't know why, but what
You
do
keep
we
going.
got?
You just keep talking. You'll think of something. You'll think of something to say. So,
anyways, a couple things in the news. Okay, so there's a deep concern again, obviously with COVID and these new strands. I didn't know there was 3 of them. Pip told me today. How many strands, Pip?
I've seen different reports with like 118 different strands. I'm not sure how they count them all, but I'm not going to get into
118 strands. Wow.
Whatever.
So as many hairs on your head, that's how many strands of COVID there are. Anyways, there's a concern that if we don't get the vaccine out quickly, these other strands that are supposedly more contagious are going to be going over the population. And there's a concern that they could be not only more contagious, more severe conditions and symptoms. So hard to say when this lockdown or things are going to get back to normal in Canada or in Ontario, where I'm from. They've just started to lift it, where we can start going out to restaurants and get our hair cut, do things like that. So we're pretty excited about it. I don't know when we're going to be back to full open place where we can participate like we did over a year ago. I think the summer is going to help. But the vaccine is going to be a big part of that for sure. And some people just don't want to take the vaccine. I know people personally who don't want to take the vaccine. I'm warming up to the idea. I'm seeing, there's a few million people that have taken it already. Mostly good stuff, I hear. So I'm hoping that by the time it comes around and I'm actually somebody as a candidate to be able to take it, I'm okay to take it. I'll have the confidence to take it, and allow me to be part of the new group of vaccinated people that can participate in the world like we used to. Anyways, so there's that, right? Obviously that's overshadowing everything we're doing. It's part of the reason the stock market and real estate continue to rise. This is concerning to me with the stock market and real estate, that it continues to rise in the wake of dire future for unemployment and the ability for the government to continue infuse cash into the economies. This looks like deflation to me. It looks like deflation is coming. The one spot where I'm feeling confident is the U.S.'s ability to consume. Definitely the number one commodity the U.S. has is consumption. And I say that with love. I do. I don't mean that in a bad way. But the United States consumes like no other population in the world. They like things big and better and more, and you don't have to convince them of it. You don't have to tell them. Do you really need a TV in your bathroom? Do you call it bathroom, Pip, or do you call it washroom?
We don't call it a washroom. Very seldom do we call it a washroom. It's always called.
What do you call it? Do you call it a bathroom or
bathroom? The
tinkle room? What do you call it?
The toilet is what they would say in Quebec, I believe.
The toilet. How graceful. Anyways, yeah, so you don't have to convince an American to do that, or to have a desire to have, not a 1-car garage, a 3-car garage. You don't have to convince them of that. United States actually and Canada are similar in a lot of ways. We don't have quite the consumption that the United States has, but definitely we are on that trend. Unfortunately, we don't. And I say this with respect to Canada. We don't have the same government system that they do in the US. I'm a fan of it. I like the way it's set up. The parliament system in Canada has some positives, but for the most part, it's closer to a dictatorship and monarchy. That sounds extreme, but when you look at the United States and the way they're set up, it's the truest sense of democracy. Not saying that there isn't issues or challenges, there is, but there's different branches of government watching each other, which is lacking in other political systems. So because of that, part of that, and the culture built behind the United States, which is the individual is number one. The individual is the most important aspect to the culture, I believe, to the United States. And because of that, they have the ability to do things faster, grow faster, build wealth faster, and because there's a belief that the individual's rights supersede the groups, really supersede the groups. And I'm a fan of that, to tell you the truth. Obviously, anything taken to the extreme is not good, but I think the individual needs to be put above the group, for the fact that if you put the group above the individual is debilitated, unable to pursue unimpeded happiness and wealth, whatever you measure that by. But if you put the individual above the group, the individual can still benefit from that in a positive way, more so than if we reverse it. So I do believe the individual should be put above the group. And I think that the individual above the group is more parallel for goals and needs and desires for society than putting the group above the individual. I think the group above the individual is squashes spirit and creativity and the ability to innovate. And I think that it would be wonderful to see other countries move towards that. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, because it takes a long time to build that kind of culture and habitual setup in your economy and laws. But I would love to see that. Yeah, Pip?
Well, okay. So I want to talk about that before we talk about that. So we're going to come back to your talk about countries moving more towards the US, is what you just said from an economic standpoint.
Putting the individual above the group.
So let's go. Before we do that, I asked the question about what we call what's on Sam's head. And what's really cool is the different languages that come up. And more importantly, I can actually do the translations right on the Facebook chat. So I guess people like to knock Facebook. I'm not a big fan of it, but nonetheless, when Albert puts that up there and he puts up un tuk o une capine, I can do the translation, and it's a beanie or a capine. And I'm sure I'm totally messing up the pronunciation.
Yeah, I don't know what a capine is.
When Cor puts up un muts, which is Dutch for a hat. And so it's interesting to see all the different translations.
Wow.
So we've got the Canadians are all calling it a toque, which I don't know many Americans that call it a toque. Maybe some people up in northern part of the US do. I hear beanie. Beanie must be something back east, because I got a Philly person and a Jersey person saying beanie.
Beanie.
And then hat, some people just call it a hat. And I found it interesting. What I would call it is the same thing my wife would call it. And where we live in the United States, we would call that a stocking hat. That's what we call it.
Stocking hat.
That's what it's called.
Sounds criminal.
Well,
stocking hat.
Actually, Steve Hipple jumped in and he said, "Is that a skull cap that you're wearing?"
A what?
And then a skull cap.
Oh.
And then Michael jumped in and said, "You are not gangsta enough to wear a skull cap." So, and I don't disagree with that. Yeah, you're probably not quite there. So
And
let's
you
have
called it, what do you
some.
guys call it there? You call it a ski mask? Is that what you called it?
No, nobody called it a ski mask here. Steve wanted to know if you were trying to, if you had what did he say? I'm getting so many messages on different time. I've got 3 computers going. I got people message me on my phone. Is Sam driving a getaway car later tonight? That's what I was asking.
I'm protesting
So-
the cold. It's cold here. I don't like it.
And
I
one
want
of
it
my
to stop.
Canadians just said, I've never heard of a stocking hat. Well, come to Nebraska, come to
There you
Iowa,
go, you
come to
see?
Kansas, come to Missouri. Don't talk while I'm talking because it just smacks it down. I've been letting you talk for like 18 hours. Let me talk for a second. So I'm just having fun with you. Can Canadians be gangsta? I don't know. I'm sure some of them think they are, Michael. And so, Wendy, stocking hat is what it is around here. Stocking hat is what it is around here. Everybody would call it that. And so great to see some people. Albert, great to have you. Mariska, please let me know. Sorry, there's a Canadian answer. Sorry. No, just come to here, and that's all you would ever hear, a stocking hat for what he has on. So yeah, let us know if you're watching live. I'd love to see who else is on there. I don't always get to see all the different things. Sam, you made a comment because what we see in the US right now, and this was one of the big things in the last election, is that the party that got elected, and actually they have the presidency, they have the House of Representatives, and technically they have the deciding vote in the Senate, which is a big deal. So they have all 3 parts of the government.
Yeah.
That happened back in when Obama was president for 2 years. It happened, and it's happened multiple times. I can't remember if the first 2 years of the Trump administration. No, they didn't have all 3. They didn't have all 3.
No.
But Obama had it for 2 years. I think his first 2 years he was in. So now the point I'm trying, and it's happened with the Republican side of it at different times too. Here's what I am seeing from an American standpoint, because I'm going to ask you a question. Keep the answer yes or no. Do you consider Canadians or Canada to be more socialistic than the United States? Yes or no?
You're asking me?
You.
Oh, of course.
That's all I want to know. That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not knocking it.
Sure.
What we're seeing here in the United States from the left or liberal side of the country is a desire or some desire. I mean, and we can even get into healthcare if you want to, and the difference between the Canadian healthcare and the US healthcare. But we're seeing a lot of pressure to become just the opposite of what you just said you thought made this country very strong, was more of a capitalistic society.
Sure.
So we're starting to see a little bit of a pull by and I would say almost a majority of Americans that want to see us be more socialistic in a lot of our stuff. What's your thought on that? Because I know I have my thoughts.
I think that's a bad idea, and I think that okay, so some socialist ideas or even communist ideas that both countries embrace. Free education is a communist idea. That's a communist idea. So both countries have a public education system, which allows individuals to participate in education up to a certain age before you get to higher education, which is university and college. But even those are subsidized more heavily in Canada. But that's a communist idea. So unemployment, communist socialist idea. Old age pension or some sort of pension when you retire. That's a communist socialist idea. So neither country is pure capitalist or pure the individual. But the individual, it's important to have, in my view, the individual ahead of the group, because the group, I think the idea of you're not important, but what you do important is tragic, right? You're not important, but what you do is important is tragic. And I think the socialist communist belief system believes that you're not important, what you do is important, really destroys, I think, the individual and what they can achieve as a person. Not to say that they don't participate in the rest of the group or there's benefits, but I really like the idea of simply this: I'm allowed to pursue what I want to pursue as long as it's not impeding someone else from pursuing what they want to pursue. Is there challenges with unbridled capitalism? Absolutely there is. Is there problems with democracies even? Absolutely. There is issues, but I challenge anybody to tell me that the United States isn't and I say this, you know, I don't know how to say it. Right now, I would consider it the absolute best functioning democracy, one could argue country in the world. And people don't want to hear that. And people, and I don't mean to offend Canada. I love Canada. Canada's given me everything I have. I mean, I love the country. I die for the country. But if I'm being objective and I'm looking about countries of the world, I think the United States, without question, is at the top. And even with all the issues that are going, the racial issues that are going, which are tragic. But think about this. In other countries, you would never be able to, some countries, you would never be able to express yourself like that you do in the United States without some sort of backlash. And I'm talking about life and death. So sure, the United States has challenges, but the chaos that you see in the United States, part of it is because the system allows them to expose themselves that way. In other countries, it's not like that. It's not like that. And in the United States, individuals are constantly asking themselves, how is this good for me? I don't think that's bad. I really don't think that's a bad thing to ask. Is this good for me? And if it's not good for me, maybe I don't want it. Where other countries are like, yeah, I know it sucks for me, but it's good for the group. And I think that philosophy has already been tested and shown not to function, because it doesn't work. It's a nice idea, but ultimately, everyone can't be equal, because that's not real life. That's not reality. Equal in value. Is life important? I'll say something that's kind of crazy. You ready for this? Why do we, why is it a big deal when an American loses their life, or even a Canadian loses their life, or someone, UK, doesn't matter where it is. In these other countries that are second world and third world, you look at those countries, and when they lose lives, it just doesn't have the same impact. Now, I'll tell you what I think it is. And I don't mean to offend anybody where they're from or how they see the world. But I really believe that it has to do with opportunity. And if you're blessed to be born in Canada or the United States or Australia or the UK, and there's lots of other countries, Germany, lots of other countries. Just by being born there, you're in the top, I don't know, 1-2% of the world just by being born there for opportunity. I think that we measure the value of that life with the opportunities that are available for that individual. Now, is that right or wrong? I don't know. I wouldn't say that I think that a life from another country is less valuable than my own. I don't believe that at all. I think every life is important and precious. But when you look at the challenges facing an individual born in a third or second world country, it's challenging. Like here, we talk about poverty, but poverty here, and I'm not saying we don't have it, because we do. Poverty here is, okay, what fast food are we going to grab, or what cheap meal are we going to eat tonight, because we can't afford to eat steak dinner every night. That's the kind of poverty we have here, versus in other countries, second and third world countries, it's not what are we going to eat tonight, it's who's going to eat tonight, which one of the family members is going to eat tonight, because we can't all eat. That's the kind of poverty I'm talking about when I look at poverty. And I'm not saying that it's not a struggle or difficult to be poor. And I've tasted that. I'll tell you right now, I've tasted that. It's not fun. It's not a fun existence and a fun place to be at. And it really plagues the spirit and the mind. What I will say is, the places that I've been, if I wasn't blessed to be born in Canada, I could have easily been there for a long, long time, my whole lifetime, and seriously committed my whole life to trying to get a better life for my son and hope that his children have a better life, because there were so few opportunities. But I was born in Canada. I'm very, very lucky. So I'm blessed to be in Canada. I love this country. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't judge our country against other countries and say that there's some things that we could do better. And one of the things that we don't do very well in Canada is we don't support entrepreneurs. We don't support business. We don't support, not real competition. I mean, competition is so important that it trumps the actual increase of wealth an individual has to make. This is a big deal. You don't have to make more money. If there's healthy competition in a market, you don't have to make money, because the competition will drop the prices. and allow you to enjoy more with the same money that you had. Now, inflation deteriorates the value of money, and that's okay. It's fine. But that competition creates jobs, which creates income, which creates money supply, which increases, inflation, but allows that competition allows the prices to drop. So your buying power, one could easily argue, is bigger, even though you're technically losing buying power through inflation. As long as the competition exceeds that of inflation, then you're ahead of the game. And this is why countries like the United States do so well. They do so well. The average income in Australia, what is it, 90,000, 80,000, or 90,000 per person? Like it's crazy. And in the United States, what is it, Pip? 30,000? You guys are making
40.
like 30,000. Like it's in Canada. I think we're somewhere in the 50s or something like that. But Australia's like 85 or 90. Is there anybody from Australia that can verify this? It's unbelievable. That's an individual. So just because you make more money, it doesn't mean you actually enjoy a better life or lifestyle or access to what you would think wealth would allow you to access. So it's not simple. We need to make more money. In fact, I'm not a big fan of minimum wage increase. I'm not. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it works. And I'll tell you why. They recently, in Canada, it's always a constant topic here, but there was an increase of minimum wage to $15, and all that did. People think that people are better off with an increase in minimum wage. It's not that simple. When minimum wage increases, guess what happens? Prices go up because companies can't afford to sell the goods and services that they sell, so they end up selling them higher. And the money that you're making extra now is gone because you're paying more for the same goods and services. So you're not ahead. You're just paying more for the same stuff. Not only that, businesses take this as an excuse to take away benefits from individuals, like sick days, like healthcare. Like it's not an automatic solution by telling people they make more money. This is not a solution. That's not a solution. The government needs to create a simpler, easier way, a path to moving from lower to middle to upper class, and all the ones in between. That's what the government needs to do. It doesn't need to give us more money. It doesn't need to. This stuff doesn't work. I'm not a big fan of the government participating in markets or getting involved, more than making sure that people stay honest. But other than that, I think the government needs to step back, because every time they get in to the market, especially, they create problems. And the reason they create problems is because they take away the one thing that keeps the market honest. And the thing that keeps the market honest is unpredictability. And when the government gets involved and mandates policies that create predictability, and that's when the market goes into trouble. That's when biggest trouble happens, when the governments, even on the municipal level, start mandating things that make the market predictable. You don't want the market to be predictable. You want it to be honest. And the only way to keep it honest is not to create rules and regulations that ensure that the market's going to do something, like interest rates. Like this thing with interest rates, bad idea. This bad idea. This thing with the way real estate's going, we're steamrolling to deflation. The only thing that's stopping deflation is the consumption I was talking about earlier, but the United States and the rest of the world that consumes is the only thing that wards it off. But you keep dropping the cost of money to zero, there's going to be no place to make money. There's going to be zero places to make money. There's going to be no reason to invest, because you can't make any money. You can't make money on a GIC, a CD. You can't make money in the market in a real sense of the word. You're not producing income from these companies. These companies don't make money. These companies are just going up in value. This is a good investment. Really? Bitcoin deserves to be $52,000. In a month ago, it was 32. How does that make any sense? How does that make sense to anybody? Really? It's really worth more? Really? Why? I'll tell you why. Because supply and demand determine the value of all things. But it works both ways. There's two edges on that sword, right? You can't trap wealth. That thing has zero intrinsic value. Some guy came up with it, or a group of people came up with this idea, and now this thing's worth 52,000, and we're like, yeah, that's what it's worth. I'm not saying Bitcoin isn't going to continue to go up or will go up. But know something, it's fiction. It's fiction. It's all fiction. Tesla, is Tesla a great company? Is it? Absolutely. But it doesn't make any real money. It's making money from government credits. This is a company that builds a fraction of the cars that Ford and GM are employing and stimulate the economy. This company is worth $800 after it's split 5-1. Come on, this stuff is this is a fiction. What about GameStop? Did you like the little move on GameStop? Worth nothing, worth 400. Now it's back to what, $50? Like in a span of weeks. You think that's normal? That's real? Casino. That's what people are treating the stock market like. It's a big fat casino. You know who wins in the casino? Well, just give you a hint. It's not you. It's not you. That's the reality is if you're looking for a quick lottery ticket, set up, get rich quick, go ahead, roll the dice. But in my view, you got a better chance of making money in Vegas than you do in the stock market right now. I mean it. The danger is ridiculous. Yeah, Pep.
Well, I think maybe you're getting a little hot under the collar there because you got your head. All the heat can't escape from your toque, your stocking hat, your beanie, your hat, whatever we want to call it. Anyway, I do want to make a comment. I don't want to get into Bitcoin and GameStop because that I think that to me is just some fiction that's being written all the time, and it's just some storyline. That's my opinion, because we know GameStop really doesn't have that much value.
Don't make
Tesla,
money. You can't justify that.
You know, you gotta. I'll go back and some of you guys aren't even old enough to remember this. If you go back to the late '90s, I'll talk about two things. Go back to the late '90s. Warren Buffett, by the way, he's from Nebraska. I just want to let everybody know that. Nothing wrong with being from Nebraska. Go Big Red. And so, oh, by the way, Australian salary, $89,000 a year. So anyway, I'm going to talk about that in just a second. I spent more time in Australia and Canada in the last 10 years than I have any other countries outside of the US. And I've spent a ton of time in both. Anyway, the point I want to make on that is that Warren Buffett back in the late 90s, he would not buy any of the .com stocks. Why wouldn't he buy them? Because what he said, I could not see any intrinsic value. And so a stock investor looks at price to earnings ratio, like a real estate investor looks at cash flow. That's what they do. It's the same, virtually the same calculation. And what he was saying is the price was here, the earnings were here. It didn't make any sense. Would you buy a piece of real estate where the price was here and the cash flow is down here? You wouldn't do it. It doesn't make sense. The only people that are, and what would happen is your hope the value goes up on the property, but you're not making enough cash flow to warrant it. So now you've got this problem if the market does correct. And even Warren Buffett said at the time, even though they thought he was nuts and he was crazy for not buying any of these stocks, he said there was no price to earnings ratio with it. He didn't get it. There was no intrinsic value in it. It's the same way with GameStop or some of these other companies as well. Tesla, as Sam brought up. What I do want to bring about, and I know I have a very strong opinion of capitalism versus socialism and communism. And I don't get too hot under the collar, and I don't argue about things very often. And Sam's going, is he really going to start saying something here? I'm going to share with you just a little bit of research, because obviously as an American, we are a tipping society. We tip. We're good tippers, okay? Most people are good tippers. Let's put it that way. I used to wait tables when I was going to college. I worked at it's called Spaghetti Works. It was a restaurant. I waited tables and I got paid by tips. This was in the late 80s into the early 90s. My average hourly wage at that time, and you can look this thing up, was $2.08. That was what I didn't even make minimum wage, because in restaurants in the United States, if tipping was a part of my compensation, I didn't even get the opportunity to make minimum wage. Minimum wage was $3.35. I was making like $2.08. It was some fraction of the $3.35. I know some of you guys are going, man, you must really be old. I know I am. It's all good. So fast forward to when I'm in Australia. You open up a menu, because we all go out to eat. And I was eating out every night because I was in Australia. It wasn't like I had a house there and I was cooking at home very often. So I'm out to eat every night, and I look at the prices and I go, man, those are significantly more than Canada, which I've been in Canada a ton. And then I'm going, Canadian prices are significantly more than US when it comes to food at a restaurant. So I'm thinking, man, this is significantly higher priced food. And then when the bill comes, what's Mr. American going to do? I'm going to leave a tip. Oh, it's $100, 20, 25 bucks, no problem for the wait staff. I'm sitting there with other Aussies and like, you don't need to tip these guys. It's already included in their wage. They get paid like 15 to 17 bucks an hour. I said, what? I said, shouldn't my service have been better then? Because quite frankly, in most of the restaurants that I went to in Australia, the service was average at best. Like any place, you get some people that are really good, but it was average. They weren't hustling. Why weren't they hustling? Because they were going to get paid no matter what I did, no matter how much I give. I'm not going to give them, I mean, the average customer is not going to give them a dime. So if the average customer is not going to give them a dime, why are they working any harder? And this is where some of that socialist mentality comes in. When I waited tables at Spaghetti Works, I was hustling, man. I was as friendly as I could be. I smiled. Guess what I did, Sam? I remembered my customers' names if I could. I know Sam's going, what the heck? Yeah, because what would I do when I'd walk up to the table? Hi, my name is Pip. I'm going to be your waiter tonight. And I would have some fun with them. I would say, okay, you guys know my name. What's your name? And then I would try to memorize their names and they would freak out when I would come back. Guess what happened to my tips when I memorized names? It went up. See, this is what, if I put out more effort, should I get more money than the person beside me? That's how I feel. If I do a better job and I create more than somebody else, I should get paid more.
Yeah.
I don't think it's hard. No incentive to work hard. I agree with you, Michael. Michael's making a comment on there. And so, James, that'll be a little tipper from the Pipper. You're up, my friend.
So let's balance this out with some problems with capitalism. Okay, so unbridled capitalism will actually cannibalize itself. So you can't just have pure capitalism because the drive towards profit can actually deteriorate its longevity, right? Because the smaller the time frame that they're looking at, so if they're looking at a year or a quarter or even a month, or some places I've been to, it's a week. They live by the week and die by the week. The smaller you get, the more narrow your vision gets, and you can actually, destroy your own market. So capitalism, with its drive for profits to drive costs down and increase profits, has limitations, right? You can't. We were talking about this, and we're not going to get into the specifics of our topic, Pep, that we had before we got on the call. I don't think we're ready for that yet. But if you have a labor force that's getting almost nothing, for their work, it's unsustainable because they can't be consumers of the product if they have no money. So the capitalist needs to recognize the connection between the consumption and the production, right? So the producer needs to make sure that they pay their employees enough to sustain the consumption of what they produce, the product or service. There has to be that relationship between the producer and the consumer. When that dissolves or that becomes imbalanced, that's when economies can be in serious danger of recessions, deflation, inflation, hyperinflation, even economic collapse. There has to be that relationship. That's why, centuries ago, when the economies were feudal systems, didn't work, which was huge in Europe. Even a slavery type society doesn't work economically, just doesn't work. In anywhere it's been done. It's been done for centuries. It doesn't work because if the people can't build wealth, they can't consume, right? Now there's sustainability in this model for a small period of time, but at some point there has to be a working and middle class to consume, so the upper classes can continue to grow wealth. If the upper classes are not allowing these individuals to participate in the economy and the wealth creation at a sustainable level, they can't consume. Now, whose responsibility is that? I think that a good business person and a good plan, and I'm not talking about a weekly or monthly or quarterly plan. I'm talking about, in Japan, some companies have 100-year plans. Was how they looked at it. So it's recognizing that relationship. The government needs to participate in making sure that these people on both sides don't break certain rules. And I think the law, and depends where you are, but I think the law, it's important to recognize that the law can't make you moral. It can make you moral, but it can stop you from being immoral, right? So we can stop you from doing something, but we can't make you do something. In most countries around the world, in Canada and the US, I'll speak to, there's no real proactive laws where you have to do something. But there are laws, most laws are based around you can't do this and you can't do this and you can't do this and you can't do this. They can't really make you do anything, and they certainly shouldn't uh, boast that they can change the way you think or the way you feel, right? You can still feel and think a certain way inside, even though you're following the laws. I think the governments need to have those laws to prohibit incentivizing certain people from doing things that are destructive to the economy and to themselves and the people around them. I think that's what the government does. But when the government comes up and starts saying silly things, like, I'm going to pick on the U.S., buddy, a little bit. When the government stands up and says, "Hey, we're gonna build all these programs to make sure that home ownership in the United States increases," to, I think the mandate, I don't know what the mandate was, over 65%, was it? I can't remember what was Bush said that. It was Junior, right? Bush Junior said it, I think, and he wanted to, yeah, it was Bush Junior, and he wanted to increase home ownership. And it sounds like a great idea. Hey, let's increase home ownership. But this is what they did. They ended up creating a predictable direction of the real estate market, because what they did is they started pushing mortgage companies like Fannie Mae and Bernie Mac, and incentivize and promote them allowing subprime borrowers money to buy property. And this was a bad idea, because it created a fake real estate rise in the market, and it eventually collapsed. People who do you remember? He called them ninja loans, right? No income, no job, no assets. You can walk into a mortgage broker and get at a bank and get a loan, and you had nothing. You had to prove nothing. You signed a document that said you made this much and you worked here, and and this and that. Nothing was verified, and they gave you a loan. It was ridiculous, and they created this predictable, because everyone was behind this idea of home ownership. They created this ridiculous, predictable state in the market. So of course the market's going to go up. But see, this is the problem. When you create a predictable state in the market, that's when things go bad. That's when people take advantage of the system. And they take advantage of the system because they're incentivized to. And the government needs to stop getting involved in the markets this way. This is not what you're supposed to do. Don't lower interest rates and not create jobs. You want the prices to go up, create jobs. Don't just throw money into the system. I get it. If you're in an emergency situation, you got to put money in the system. But this is your solution? Drop interest rates and keep funneling money into the economy? This is going to work? Give me a break. This doesn't work. If you don't produce something, if you don't create wealth, you can't just create it out of thin air in the sense of, I'm going to just give you money and you have more and our GDP is going to grow. You have to actually produce or create or service something. All wealth is created, but you got to participate in that creation. It doesn't just, I'm going to give you a few extra bucks and now you're richer. You're not richer. You're not richer. This involvement of the government is going to be destructive. You can't manufacture these markets long term. You can help. That's okay. But this setup is ridiculous. The real estate market and the stock market are hilarious. The values are going up based on what? The more these companies, by the way, the more these companies in the stock market go up, the less sense it makes to invest in these companies. These companies don't even make money. And the ones that made money, if they keep going up, the relative return is going to be like 1% or less than 1%. Real estate prices are out of control. You can't even cash flow a property now. You're lucky if you can get 0.5% a month. And we're looking for 1% a month. Like this game that they're playing is not going to help anybody. You're not getting more house. You're just paying more money for the same house you were going to buy a year ago. This makes sense? This doesn't make sense. So this kind of participation by the government is going to be destructive. This is destructive. You got to create. I'll tell you, I hope somebody from the government's listening, because I'll tell you what you need. A public works program. United States, Canada, hear me this. You need to put money into the system by creating a public works system where they're fixing roads and bridges and streets and stuff. That's at least a solution where people actually get jobs and make money and pay taxes and consume. This is just sending money to people. This is crazy. This is insane. This is insane. And this is not a good habit, to have this happen. A lot of the money they were funneling into the system, a lot of the money going into the market, this is gambling. People are gambling with their money. And the United States and Canada, not only the only two, but others around the world, are gambling on the future of their people by participating in the markets, not just here, historically. The governments need to stop getting involved, other than making sure that people play by the rules and creating a path for people to go from lower to middle to upper class and all the spots in between. That's what you can do. Don't sit there and complain about the disparity between the rich and the poor. Like, you need to do something about that. You don't need to do nothing about that except make sure that people have a path to get there. That's all you got to do. Don't start bringing out that stuff for stats so you can inject more money into social services that ultimately damage the individuals. This is silly stuff. I don't mean we don't take care of our people. I'm not saying get rid of unemployment or even welfare. I'm not saying get rid of these things, or retirement, income that we get in retirement. I'm not saying these, but this isn't the cure. That's not the cure. That's managing the sickness. You need to find a way that if someone gets unemployed, they have an easy path to getting a job. People don't want to sit and do nothing. Very few people. I really think you want to trade places with someone who's unemployed so they can get the check. I hear people complaining about people on welfare going, this is bull. They're taking advantage. You want to trade spots with that guy? That's who you want to trade with? You think that guy is getting something that you're not? This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Poverty is in here. It's in here. It's a state of time. Sorry, it's a state of mind, not a state of time. Do you understand what I'm saying? People getting this, and they live there forever. It's systematic. And they pass that sickness on to their kids. This is not where we want to be. And there's nothing wrong with what Pip said. Why shouldn't you get more for doing more? What's wrong with that? What's so bad about that setup of that system? I don't want to oversimplify the ailments or the solutions here, but I'll tell you what won't work. Telling people, hey, it's okay. You don't need to participate in the economy. We'll take care of you. That doesn't work. You need to embrace the commitment to an individual to their own happiness. Give them a path to take. That's all people want. Just a path. Give me a path. They're not afraid of hard work. Most people work hard. Most people will put the energy. I'm not talking about the 1% on the bottom and the top that don't do nothing. The people that are the extremes. We're not talking about them. But you look around, the system doesn't even get close to where we are. If majority of people aren't willing to put in the effort. We need to recognize the state that we're in as investors, as people are looking at wealth and building wealth, and don't succumb to it. Don't succumb to this philosophy, this idea that it's okay. Don't think there's easy money out there to be made with the stock market and real estate. Use your math and the numbers, do the things you're supposed to do. And if this thing does not make money, you want to flip it. But thinking that you're going to buy something and hold it for 20 years or 10 years and it's magically going to keep going up in this ridiculous market, you're in trouble. History tells us a different story. Pip?
Well, we just like it when you keep hitting the desk and every time you're talking, and I don't know if you can hear my mic.
I'm put some soft here. Out of order. He's out of order.
You're all out of order.
You're all out of order.
So apparently a few people want you to be the premier of Canada.
Oh my gosh.
Which is really sad because I feel sorry for the entire country if that's the case. But anyway, so, okay, we are at almost 50 minutes in right now. So we could talk for hours about this. And I know I agree with you on multiple points, disagree on what you call your hat, but that's a whole nother thing. So anyway, you have any last comments?
Well, yeah, before we go, a couple things. We'd love for you to give us points that you want to know more about. It doesn't have to be a statement that you're for or against something, just an area that you like to talk more of. Even the history. I love the history of wealth. We can talk about that. Just give us some questions that we can send around. Or you're just going to listen to us rant. and it's I think it's better if we keep it somewhere where we want you to get something out of this. So we love talking about, things that matter to you. And I'm sure that many of you have common ones, but if you don't, we'd love to hear from you. So please, send us your questions. Pip, how do they send us their questions?
Just sending me a private message. You're all friending me on Facebook.
That's right.
Send me a private message. It's good
Yeah.
to go. Couple of things, housekeeping wise, share this with other people. I'm sure my wife will put it on the YouTube channel. So you can go to my YouTube channel and get it on there as well. I find it interesting that my YouTube channel has Sam ranting for hours at upon time. So that I'm sure I'm going to start to get some dislikes on YouTube because they will dislike Sam, but that's okay. It's all good. And so bad publicity is better than no publicity, right? I think so. So until next Wednesday on the Wealth Debate, we will see you guys. Please share this video. Let us know what you think. Send us questions on private chat. That way nobody even know what your question is. I don't have to say, hey, the question, Michael, just put them on my private chat. So the question, I won't say that it has to be from a certain person. So if you think you got a dumb question, with the exception of probably Core, I won't mention your name, okay? Core, I'll probably mention his name just for fun. But yeah, send your questions. And even if you have multiple questions, we may not get to all of them in the 1 week because Sam can talk for 3 hours on basically no questions.
You know what I'm going to talk about next week? There's something I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the history of credit. How's that? I love that topic. We're going to talk about the history and the origin of credit and where it came from. I think it's a wonderful story and how it became to be. And credit, just so you know, comes from the Latin word credo, I believe, which means trust. There's a little trust behind credit, right? You lend somebody some money to give it back. Some cool stuff you can learn about credit and its history.
Well, it is 7:51, 8:51 where you live. Sam, there you go.
God's country.
I didn't say that. I'm not going to say that anymore.
I'll say God's country.
There you go. It's all good.
How do you say God in French?
I have no idea how you say anything. Je regrette beaucoup. Je ne peux pas français, parlez-vous anglais. That's all I know. So anyway, I mean, we got some Dutch people on here. We got all kinds of different backgrounds. Nice. And so with that, turn to somebody you know, somebody you don't know, and tell them you're going to be all right. We'll see you guys next week on the Wealth Debate.
You're going to be
Have
all
a
right.
good evening, guys. Talk to you soon.